First of all, like I say, delighted that you have everybody's joined us. We really appreciate it, and we hope very much to deliver both a useful and informative overview today. I think hopefully some of it will be thought-provoking. Some of it might be just a case of a lot of the kind of rhetoric within the cybersecurity community right now. Some of you will be familiar with that, but it's a really useful, I think, exercise. It's an interesting exercise to get a feel for some of the big predicted threats, certainly the threat targets. Perhaps it's more accurate to say the threat targets in 2016. Some of the kind of threat trends for this year, along with, really importantly, the things that we can all do, in order to better protect both ourselves and our organisations. So the agenda is pretty straightforward, guys. We're going to start with a summary of the large predicted threats for 2016. So kind of what's looming, what joys do we all have to look forward to in that respect. I'm also delighted to let you know that we're joined this afternoon by Mark Tyker. Mark Tyker is Security Solutions Architect with Hewlett-Packard. We've done a lot of work with Mark. He's done a lot of work with NNT, so he's got a lot of exposure to our software, but he's also got a heap of experience from the front line in terms of security strategy and risk, security project management, really from the perimeter to the core. So Mark's got experience of, pretty much if it has the word security anywhere near the technology, then Mark's had some involvement with it. So a bit of a kind of view from the trenches from Mark. I'm going to look at some of the kind of typical mistakes that are still continue to be made by IT teams. We're in a privileged position. We speak to IT professionals all of the time. We talk to security professionals all of the time, and so we get a really good kind of bird's eye view of what's happening out there in the real world, and some tips that you can take away for an improved IT estate. And this is the third one of these that we've done today. So I think I started my day at I'm based in the US at 5 o'clock this morning. So this is the last one before perhaps before a cold beer. But the tips are great. They've worked really well. There's some really interesting stuff in there. So a lot of the feedback we've had was that was very useful indeed. We're also going to take a quick look at how you can use automation, change detection, threat intelligence to better improve your security posture. And like I said, at the end we've got a bit of time for Q&A. Okay, so to get started then, just to give you a bit of a sort of background, we spent a fair bit of time really studying, reading the sort of annual reports from kind of, in inverted commas, the kind of collective industry experts, if you like. We picked out three. I picked out Experian, I picked out Trend, and I picked out Gartner, just as a good kind of representative cross-section of the sort of general authorities within this space. There's obviously a lot more. We could have gone to Krebs. We looked at all those, but these are the ones that we've used for this particular session. And really just to kind of highlight some of their projected top threats. And like all of these things, guys, there's a sort of healthy combination, a healthy mix of conjecture and finger in the air guesswork. That certainly plays a big part. But also, predictions based on previously observed patterns, factual predictions, as well as some recurring themes that we see developing. And you'll see some of those recurring themes, things like hacktivism, for example, ransomware, healthcare being a target. These are all things which recur throughout most of the reports. So we start with Experian. There's a few things that I picked out here. And I mean, first one, if you consider that the EMV chip and pin was originally conceived and positioned as being something that would kind of be almost represent the end of credit card theft. That's certainly why it's been launched here into the United States. And it was a kind of cure-all for data theft. Interestingly here, you'll see that almost 50% of the audience surveyed see no discernible improvement. No, so never mind an alleviation. They see absolutely zero likelihood of any improvement, nor do they see an improvement. Of course, there's lots of reasons for that, because the point of hack is ever expanding, particularly within e-commerce, where data is stored at various points. It transitions through various points. So that's that. Again, this is a kind of a recurring theme to some extent. Certainly healthcare institutions who are notoriously poorly protected. Their cybersecurity initiatives are well known within the industry for being poor, frankly. It's fascinating for me that the black market is now offering 10 times what they would have offered for credit card details. Again, it sort of speaks to the ingenuity of these crime organizations and the way in which they intend to use information for benefit and for monetization, for turning this information into cash. And I struggle to figure out how anybody would. Sorry, let me just do one thing here. Just mute one more line. It struggled to figure out how on earth you can make money out of somebody's healthcare records, but the information's used to generate fake IDs. It's used to generate fake accounts so that people can purchase medical equipment or even prescription drugs. There's a big, healthy black market for prescription drugs, of course. One of the more common ruses is to combine a patient's patient's details with a fictitious medical provider and submit a fraudulent insurance claim. So all kinds of ways to make money, hoodwink the authorities. Cyber conflicts between. So one last thing on that. I mean, the other thing about healthcare records is, if you get your credit card stolen, it's a pain and it's a hassle, but you can at least reset the credit card number and get a new one. If you get your healthcare records stolen, they're out there. They can never be reset. Your information is exposed, and you're completely compromised, and you will be forever. So just to add a little bit of gravitas to the kind of serious nature of this. The third thing on here is the sort of cyber conflicts. I don't think that's a huge surprise to anybody, particularly the sort of global climate being kind of as it is right now. The fact that cyber warfare is something that nations will look to as a method, as a means of compromising the enemy. But we shouldn't be surprised because it's nothing new, to be honest, although it's predicted as being something that we'll see a little bit more, something that will increasingly affect civilians. It already does affect us, civilians. If you look at the Stuxnet virus, for example, that originated as a form of cyber warfare, specifically targeting nuclear facilities. So it was built as a cyber tool, a cyber warfare tool, and has leaked into the kind of corporate world. More recently, as recently as last year with the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, took reports there of Russia disabling cell phone networks. So, people just having their cell phones compromised. So very clear again that this is something that shows no signs of abating, shows no signs of going away. And hacktivism, again, that's a recurring theme. That's something we see coming up and up and up. And I think they've kind of been given a renewed vigor with the success of things like the Ashley Madison kind of naming and shaming. If anybody's been anywhere near US press over the last 12 months, you'll be aware of the Ashley Madison scandal. But also, ranging from that to hacktivists threatening to target ISIS, and just general kind of corporate or cause-based hacktivism's really being kind of given a sort of new lease of life. And I think, again, largely based on the fact that it's proven to work. It's proven effective, and so they've kind of been encouraged by the success of previous attempts. Trend, in terms of ransomware, we've seen this already. We saw that with the LA recently. If you read any of our blogs, you'll see the LA Presbyterian Medical Center in Los Angeles was recently held to ransom, essentially disabled and compromised a bunch of medical systems and facilities. And that really speaks both to experience, prophecy on healthcare being compromised, as well as just the general practice of cyber extortion increasing. Now, the interesting thing about that one in particular is that they didn't get away with millions of dollars. There was a there was a healthcare breach in the US last year where they got something like 4.5 million records. This one, it was just a straightforward hack for cash. It was just a quick hack for cash. It was $17,000 was handed over, and they released them. But that actually feeds into another worrying trend that we see. This slightly less sophisticated, where hacking is no longer the exclusive domain of sophisticated crime syndicates, but starts to get into the hands of your kind of everyday criminal. We also talk about consumer-grade smart devices causing fatalities. Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid that's probably going to continue to grow as virtually everything becomes an operating system, from drones that are circling our, no-fly zones. That scares, for somebody that travels a lot for business, that's something that is, a big concern. But again, healthcare, more specifically, smart devices being used aggressively, not just, heart, kidney, and lung machines, which are all now based on an operating system. They're all hackable. But even, handheld devices for transmitting patient information, emergency care information. Once again, these all, unfortunately, it saddens me to say it, but these all render themselves targets for this sort of thing. The malware increase in mobile phones is pretty horrific. When we first started tracking malware on PCs way back in 1984, so just if anybody's old enough to remember that, it took about 21 years for PC-based malware to get anywhere near to 20 million instances. Conversely, it's taken just under 5 years for the mobile phone industry to ramp up, predominantly on the Android platform. And worrying statistics in here. China, 3 out of 4 apps are malware. It's a horrifying concept, and I guess it kind of tells you all you need to know. But in contrast to that, less than 50% of organisations will have a dedicated IT protection specialist. And I said on an earlier presentation, I said, for us that's kind of good news and bad news, because for us security guys, in theory there'll be plenty of jobs out there, but the flip side of that is that it just speaks to the fact that even now, even at this sort of advanced stage of security maturity, we're still kind of woefully understaffed and compromised in terms of our ability to deal with these threats. Cybercrime legislation, as the sort of United Nations start to get their arms around this global threat, the moves have already started to begin legislation, a kind of unified attempt to better protect the organisation. So I think you'll see a lot more government activity in this space generally. I think you'll see the emergence of a lot more legislation around cybersecurity, and I think you'll continue to see a lot more just general kind of political rhetoric. We haven't really seen this occupy the kind of election domain just yet, so it's not something that people are using to win votes, but we certainly see that coming. It's part of the whole, the sort of homeland security. It kind of sits very much within that wheelhouse. Gartner take a very different approach. Their approach is much more around recommendation rather than kind of pontification or prediction. So these are things which we're sort of now starting to, in this part of the session, we're going to start to get into things that we can think about, things that we can do to really start to just get arms around this once and for all. But they talk about the contemporary threat environment broadening with the advancements of things like bimodal and shadow IT. Now, you may or may not know anything about those things, and to be honest, you don't really need to, but just the fact that the way that IT is being delivered, the way that IT is being deployed is changing enormously. The marketing department, the finance department, in many organizations, they have their own little sort of subdivision, self-contained IT deployment, because we've armed the masses, and these can often sit way outside of the control of IT, of the IT team. Interestingly, Gartner, Gartner talk a lot about emerging technologies. They've always got half an eye on the latest thing, but there's a huge degree of their rhetoric centered around going back to basics. They talk a lot about focus on, prevention rather than detection. So hardening your environment. Don't get too overly focused on zero-day and advanced persistent threats. And again, nod towards pragmatism perhaps is what I put in here. Certainly don't over-focus on APT or zero-day threats. We don't mean ignore them, certainly that. But more important is, don't stand there looking at the sort of highly sophisticated new things and leave the front door open. Much more important is to ensure that the staples are, covered, and we'll come on to onto that. But the fact is that, most breaches, even now, I think something like 99%, I think it's on in the next slide actually, 99% of infections and breaches are already known to us. So kind of a slightly more pragmatic message than we've seen from Gartner previously. I think they, like us, have realized that, the sort of message of security has become slightly blurred, and they're trying to sort of sharpen that image up for people, which is really a great thing to do. So there it is. They report that 0.99% of exploits are based on vulnerabilities known. That's a thing that they expect to continue. So again, don't focus too much on the new, the sort of latest and greatest. And I think balance perhaps a traditional focus on perimeter security, firewalls, and antivirus, and a little bit more on some of the things that we're going to talk about, which is actually, look, there's some things you can be doing, and you can be doing them right now, that are going to make a huge difference to how secure you are. And a lot of the sort of black magic, and Mark Kedgley is going to talk a bit more about that in his presentation. It still remains that. It's still black magic. So don't build security solutions around the black magic. Build security solutions around the known, around the visible, around the things that we can do right now to protect ourselves. So what do we think? So we occupy this space as well, and we spend our days thinking about security, talking to customers, trying to encourage them to do things, battling with budgets and all that kind of stuff. And the answer is pretty much fairly simple. To some extent, the answers are kind of already there. Part of the problem, however, is that they're not very sexy, and they don't sell page space on secure computing. They don't encourage clicks on the various security websites, etc. But they are still there nonetheless. If you want to know how to secure your environment, go and read a toothy security standard like the PCI Data Security Standard, for example. If you read the PCI Data Security Standard and you read it, and like all of these things, it takes a bit of reading. It takes a bit, but it's something that we can all get our arms around. Then you will be vastly better off. So like I say, doing these things will be a huge benefit to you. So we agree that the field of attack is broadening. We talked about healthcare, mobile, shadow IT, and hacktivism, becoming sort of bigger and broader areas of attack. This one is interesting to me as well. The fact that we see that the perpetrator sophistication is already decreasing. So, malware is available on the black market, and what that does is it encourages sort of opportunist, kind of communal garden crooks, if you like, to join in. When they see $17,000, quickly handed over by a Los Angeles medical center, that seems like quick and easy money to them, and so. It's like I said previously, it's no longer the exclusivity of the sophisticated cyber gangs. It's very much kind of open season on trying to hack us, unfortunately, and unfortunately that's something which is going to get worse. We also think, I would go so far as happen to say, I know anybody that interacts with technology on a daily basis like we all do is going to become the victim of cybercrime to some degree or another this year. You just will. Now, it might be something as simple as your email details are exposed inadvertently. But it could be more serious. There was a guy in the office just yesterday who went to complete his tax return, and when he went to do so, got a big message saying somebody's already filed a tax return using this social security number. Transpires that it was a fraudulent return, and the IRS was hacked here recently. So that's very, very close to home. I myself was my email details were exposed during the Home Depot hack, and it's been a pain ever since. And the last point about the legislators are circling, we'll come to that. But the two biggest blockers remain, unfortunately. The two biggest blockers here are cost and apathy. And what we mean by that is that still we see it even now. This is a cost. Security is a cost. The sales guys and the marketing teams will do, and they'll make every effort to convert that into a sort of value-based, monetarized proposition. But the fact is that it's a cost. From a pure P&L standpoint, it's a cost. And it means that, investing in this stuff isn't probably going to mean that we sell more hammers, probably isn't going to mean that we sell more cars or houses or whatever we do. And the prevailing culture of commerce is still such that those investments are scrutinized way more than they should be. So, I think that will change. I'm old enough to remember what it was like to be able to drive a car without a seatbelt on. And, back in those days, you could fill a room with 1,000 people and everybody would agree that it was smart to wear a seatbelt and that it saved lives. And about half of them would drive home without a seatbelt on. And it wasn't until it became legislative law, it wasn't until it became a requirement that then everybody started doing it. And I'm afraid that might be what needs to happen here. And, the legislators are circling. It won't be too long before we get the better call Saul Goodman, have you been hacked? Has your data been exposed? Call me and I'll jump on it. We're already seeing that now, and they're trying to get their arms around it. So, okay, good. Well, look, guys, that's the end of my piece there. I'm going to hand over to another Mark now, Mark Tyker, and Mark's just going to talk very briefly about sort of his experiences from the front line and give you a quick overview of the world from his perspective. So, Mark, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, Mark talked about the malware, and a lot of these issues are part of the infrastructure already there. They're already remaining. They just bubbled with service because that's what the potential hackers look at. A lot of these can be treated proactively based on experience. Most organizations don't even know their own network. They don't have a good estate. They don't have a good asset database. They don't even know when developers put servers on the network, or a DNS server could have been there for 20 years and no one's updated it. These are all the things that are crucial to identifying the landscape within your own environment, where no one really has a good comprehension, no book of work, no documentation how things are set up, no baseline. And where NNT comes in is actually helps you establish that baseline, establish that server standard, to enforce information security policy, where you can have now, if someone does a change on the network, the FIM agents actually install and actually will report in a dashboard in real time that somebody has changed something. Whether if it was an unplanned change, hey, you can now notify, by the way, we've identified this system or a group of systems or a hierarchy of systems that something has changed in the network unplanned. Then you can go contact the people that tried to attempt this change. Like, was this an unplanned change? Yes, it was. Was it something else? Was it a malware? Was somebody, injected ransomware or malware in an email and it came across the server host to the workstation, where now the server and the workstation are now impacted, and they're able to detect it very easily, rapidly with NST. If you have custom policies that you've created over the years, or custom scripts, we have a lot of script system accounts that run millions and millions of transactions per second across authentication services, where those scripts can now be transitioned to policies where you now no longer have to maintain or find the history of the script and then untangle a spaghetti web. And that's where we are seeing this. And over the months that I've been working with NNT, we've been slowly migrating scripts from legacy scripts that no one even knows what they do anymore, to hardened scripts, with the Linux that still come in. And you know how you have to put that on the host, where you're not running a script, and then you harden it, and then you have to run the script again. Where the FIM agent is a 24/7 agent, almost like a ADT of your system. So that's where we work with in NNT in our partnerships with existing customers and potential customers, where we kind of give them that ADT feeling. And NP is also scalable, adaptable, modular based on how you want it set up. It's more than, it's a dessert topping in a 4-wax. So I'm back to you, Mark.
All right. Thanks very much, Mark. Interesting to get a third-party view on all of this. So really interesting. And one thing we didn't say at the beginning, I'll provide contact details. So if anybody wants to get the sort of HP enterprise view on security or talk to us, there's a survey at the end of the webinar, but you can just email us. There's contact details on the website as well, and we'd be pleased to help. So thanks very much, Mark. I've got it falls to me to cover the sort of typical mistakes made by IT teams, and obviously having worked in this industry for too many years now, we've seen a lot of this. It's cyclical, like all these marketplaces. Same things happen over and over again, and it is a commercial market. Believe it or not, there's a lot of vendors out there whose main priority, rather than furthering your security measures, is primarily to make themselves some money. So salesmanship, marketing comes into this, just like in any market. And I'm a bit, I get fascinated by the sort of healthcare market and the wild claims that are made there. It's not that dissimilar to the cybersecurity market. There's plenty of FUD. We talk about FUD, fear and uncertainty and doubt. We're preying on your insecurities, your fears about security in order to sort of amplify the urgency and acuteness of the need you've got. And the problems, they're often the same as the personal health cures. There's always vendors in the market trying to say that they can cure all known threats, when actually, just like personal health, it's never as simple as that. It's not a trivial thing to work on. Cybersecurity takes so many forms. The range and nature of threat is so varied that there's just not getting away from the fact that it's going to take a bit of effort. It's going to take a wide range of measures to deal with it, just like the sort of, the weight loss, the fitness thing. However, what we find is that there's a pitch, there's a sales pitch there, and it's pretty easy to be tempted by the pitch. These days there's as much security sold in appliance form. Some of them pretty sexy, they're pretty tempting. The pitch is good, and if the claim is that this thing really can capture and defeat APTs, it can handle phishing attacks, it can deal with malware, insider threats, hacktivism, rogue employees. What about ransomware, government-sponsored or sort of blue-chip espionage? Then it's going to be a pretty good tool, and all our problems will be solved. And I'd also say, the analyst community has a bit of a role to play in this too. They thrive on new concepts, new companies, and a new pitch. The whole lifeblood is the new. That's what they're selling, the information, the detail they've got. So it is. It can be a confusing marketplace. There's a lot of noise. I won't name the products, but one of these sort of new age appliances that does the sort of sandboxing, essentially, as attachments or files come into the premises, they're isolated, run through a sandbox, sort of simulates the server or desktop environment to see what happens. And it's sound practice if you can run the suspect package, and it either essentially makes calls out from the network or is receiving data after it's been executed. Essentially signatures of unusual behaviour for the sort of attachment that it is. Then that's a good way of sussing out whether it's possibly suspicious or not. And theory's great, and actually the sort of products that have been developed to deliver this sort of higher level intrusion protection or malware defense are super. They're backed by cloud-based repositories, so there's a bit of a crowdsourced element to the information. and theory is really sound. The problem that I have with it, and a lot of our customers as well who've sort of been around the loop, is that it's not all malware. Delayed action APT malware will circumvent the operation of the sandboxing machine. Some of them sort of put they wind the clock forward to see what happens in a few weeks' time or a month's time. But guess what? If I'm a malware provider and I'm playing the long game, well, I just make sure that there's no suspicious activity for a long period of time. So there's some ifs and buts about it. Also, any malware that's introduced by privileged employees, anything that bypasses the sandbox, well, of course, that's also not going to be captured. And this is the point I'm trying to make, that the range of attack vectors is often a term you'll hear. The threats can come from any number of directions, both from inside the corporate network as well as outside. We tend to be sort of more fixated by the incoming sort of internet-based threats, but more and more the sort of socially engineered phishing is a classic example of that. These types of attacks which serve to abuse the trust of a user inside the network to sort of welcome in the malware or welcome in the bad connection, and they're pretty good at fooling and evading the defences. So even the best, most lauded piece of technology is never going to be comprehensive. And the same is true for the various SIEM systems, logging systems, intrusion protection, AV, even the sort of system integrity, file integrity monitoring solutions that are out there, apart from ours, of course. But that's me talking as a vendor. So what's the answer to it? Well, of course, if we were told that we really could lose weight by, get a six-pack, get marathon-beating stamina just from drinking a sort of kale milkshake, then we'd probably all have a go at it. The reality, of course, is that it's not going to happen. No matter how much sort of cucumber pulp you consume, getting fit, getting healthy, it's more complex, and same is true of cybersecurity. Unfortunately, reality is it's a 24/7 discipline. It's going to require a combination of technology measures, procedures, working practices, and if you do everything, all the right things correctly, continuously, then you will be able to maintain solid defences. But it's pretty much why organisations get breached. It's not for lack of new technology. It's largely for lack of concerted, continual implementation of security best practices. And that's why NNT is really focused in the way that it is about continuous protection, about doing the basics right, even if that's maybe not always the sexiest message to sort of repeat what we already know. So in the meantime, what can we do? Well, the webinar was billed as covering some security tips. So I'll cover this. I'm really hoping that some of this is going to be, some of it may be new. Some of it may just be a bit of a reminder to, yeah, we tried that, but we didn't give it a good go, or yeah, worth revisiting, because everything I'll talk about definitely has a good contribution to make to any organisation's cybersecurity strategy. A lot of what I talk about is not buying a new gadget. I've deliberately sort of stuck to the what can we do more or less within our own means. What free of charge elements can we use? What can we enable? And I'll whiz through these, but in a lot of cases I'm going to be talking about sort of third-party source material or downloads. So anything that you see that catches your eye that you'd like to take further, certainly get in touch with us, but we'll put together a pack after this which will include sort of various links and a few tutorials for using some of these elements. And hopefully, if you get some good results, let us know, and we'll take it forward. Okay, so in terms of the mitigating vulnerabilities, we work with all of the leading security policies, governance standards, and once you read and get familiar with a number of these, you start to see that they're all, to a greater or lesser extent, saying the same thing. No surprises really, because there's only one way really to secure a 2012 R2 server. There's settings on there which will sort of govern the operation, the openness of the server, and therefore sort of conversely govern the security of the machine. And whether you need to secure systems for a PCI initiative or a NERC SIP initiative if you're an energy company, or a SOX because you've got financial information, whatever, protecting and securing IT assets largely comes down to the same thing. They will all talk about making sure you know what's out there and making sure you know how to lock down, secure, or in our terms, mitigate vulnerabilities. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Well, when we get into this area, we talk about the sort of classic vulnerabilities and classic lockdowns. So remove unnecessary services. Know what ports should be open on systems, because that's a great signature for any sort of breach activity. New ports being open, new services being started on systems, that's a suspicious activity unless you've instigated that. And the sort of hardening exercise will involve sort of skinning down the machine, removing functionality that isn't required. But one of the reasons why most of these security standards aren't very prescriptive, they tend to say understand vulnerabilities or subscribe to the latest vulnerability information and implement it, is because it's a very fluid environment. New vulnerabilities crop up all the time, and new ways to exploit them are talked about. So it pays to keep on top of this. The other element is that how you would harden or secure a system very much comes down to your own organisation's environment and the way that you use these things. So simply if you don't need a web server on a machine or FTP server on a machine, remove it. If you do need it for the purposes of the application, well, you're going to need to work out how to protect and secure that machine through other means. So hardening policy necessarily involves really understanding what security threats are there, how you mitigate them, and what the impact is if you do implement sort of mitigation techniques. And one of the reasons why I've got this Centre for Internet Security logo up here on the top left, on top right, is that this is an organisation that works with all leading manufacturers, security investigators, academic institutions to work out where the vulnerabilities exist and how you should handle them. And the cool thing is that they take all that information, put it in a very readable format with clear descriptions of the vulnerability, how to mitigate it, so remediation advice, and what the potential impact of that is. And you can sit yourself down, work through one of those lists. Better still, there are automated products out there. It's something that the latest change tracker system will do. Effectively, from a standing start, you can get a full audit of your systems, get a report of how to make them more secure, what you need to do in terms of commands or settings to apply, and take it on from there. And we've actually taken it a step further. We provide things like group policy templates, for example, to assist with automation of the hardening measures as well. But this information is freely available from the CIS, so go take a look at it. Okay, the next step, well, these are some of the sort of traditional elements. Mark mentioned earlier, everyone knows about firewalls and AV. These days, pretty much everyone knows that they're fallible security measures too. Zero-day threats easily evade antivirus, and even while the sort of AV is gobbling up system resources, sort of scanning files and throwing up false positives, we've all experienced it's a bit of a pain sometimes to use these things. And similarly for firewalls, intrusion protection, there's numerous ways to get around it. Phishing or APT or just other insider attacks will get around those things. So, but they're fallible, but still, really, really useful because there's plenty of threats out there that they will defeat, and this is all about layers of security. So the other two elements that are on this slide are the things that I'll talk about because they're perhaps less well understood and something you might not have come across or might not have sought to implement previously. But both of these are Microsoft innovations. They're both free of charge, which is why I've picked up on them, and they're both pretty interesting in that the EMET functionality. I mean, this is great because although it's an optional extra, and the reason why it's optional is that it is it's an active security defense. So like a lot of these things, it's not immune to throwing up false positives or blocking application activity that's actually desirable. But if you use it, I've shown here with a wizard screen, there's a lot of standard protection you can layer up by using this, and it does things like heads off a number of sort of malware techniques. The sort of idea of file-less malware, so the sort of classic browser infection or browser hijacking, which allows processes to be taken over, memory exploits that exist in the operating system, a number of browser vulnerabilities, and man-in-the-middle attacks, so getting duped by false certificates again to sort of get malware or infection in through the browser, predominantly, PDFs, another classic thing we've heard about because they run active content, as do spreadsheets, as do Word, and EMET is set up with a whole bunch of built-in protections for all of those common applications, but you can add in other ones as well. And likewise, the AppLocker element at the back there, it's something that's built in. You enable it via group policy or local security policy, and it does, again, a fairly basic job of kind of blacklisting, whitelisting applications, DLL operation on servers or endpoints. So again, it's something that is best experimented with before you introduce it on a wide-scale basis because it will block application operation. The great thing is that if you've got a very locked down, particularly desktop environment, it will stop anything outside of the corporate standard from being run, including sort of malware and foreign pieces of software that you don't want on your machines. But something worth revisiting because you get the recipe right, it really will save your neck in various instances. Okay, the final point on that was just that, of course, in AV terms, there's the Microsoft Defender as well, which again, if you want to use commercial AV, that's great, but Defender has really upped its game in local times. So just moving through these, because we had 10 of these, it's a bit of a mouthful to get around. But Mark Tyker highlighted this earlier, that cybersecurity it's not just the responsibility of the IT team and their security kit, but more and more, it's got to be an organisation-wide competence. And we talk about this a lot, that children grow up being taught about food hygiene. Nobody for a minute thinks that it's just sort of professional chefs that know about this stuff. But cybersecurity hygiene, by contrast, it's going to be generations before that becomes a basic life skill because we're just learning about it now, and to pass that on and get that really ingrained throughout society is going to be a long old haul. But the more we can educate users to not click on dodgy links to keep your guard up for phishing attempts and so on, the better off we're going to be. In the meantime, and particularly in a corporate environment, I'm sure you've got these things already, but just researching this again, I went back to one of our friends, the SANS Institute, and they've actually refreshed a lot of their free-to-use posters and flyers. You can use the one in the background there is about phishing awareness, and you put this up in the lunch area, or by the water cooler in the office, just to get people to look at it a few times a week, just on the basis that they will get some education, they will remember about these things, and a lot of the time the corporate problems coming through users actually letting the bad guys in. And on that basis, I mean, the reason why I've also highlighted the use of encryption in this particular side is that it's also a pain if you've ever used this. It naturally slows everything down. It invariably gets in the way at some stage because it encrypts things that you actually need freer access to. But also, if you've ever had the issue where someone calls up sheepishly and say that they've had their laptop stolen, their company equipment, I mean, that's expensive and embarrassing anyway for them and for the organisation. But if it goes missing with confidential data on, Mark's talking about health records, which would be the most horrendous thing, or card details, or essentially any sensitive information that you just don't want outside of your organisation. The use of encryption in the right way could just save your life on that. And I've highlighted BitLocker, which again is the free of charge Microsoft utility. There's plenty of commercial packages which will do this too, but seeing as it's at your fingertips via modern Windows systems anyway, it's worth covering it. There's plenty of options, so you can use it to just encrypt removable drives, for example. So if you're particularly concerned about data leaving the premises on USBs or removable drives, then you could just encrypt those and keep it within the confines of the building if people are using sort of desktops. But you can encrypt the whole drive if you want. To that end, there's also some get out of jail operations as well. So if a laptop is encrypted and someone's forgotten the PIN or password, how does somebody with the right privileges get into that? And so to that extent, again, it's something that you've got to research and experiment with a bit. We've got some tutorials. But the cool thing is, going back to those CIS benchmark reports I mentioned earlier, things like BitLocker, and indeed EMET and not AppLocker, that tends to be a personalised thing, but certainly EMET and BitLocker, the recommended setup for those things is also included in the latest CIS benchmark. So you can get very, very prescriptive guidance about how best to implement and use this stuff free of charge. The tools are right there, and of course we'll audit and reinforce that through change tracker reports. So hopefully that's sparked some interest and could just save things further down the line. Okay, so the last one, really, I think going back to my blenders and cucumber milkshakes and that sort of thing. Don't be too thrown off by the latest must-haves. You'll get a lot further by doing the basics well. It's what Gartner is saying. Gartner sort of do sort of swing and change their mind about things, but right now they've got a very much a we know what security best practices should be run. We know that they are comprehensive. You don't need new technology. New technology should just make those time-honoured best practices easier to operate or more automated. But really there's nothing new, particularly in terms of how you head off the threat. It's just how well you put it into practice. And that's certainly true for us too. We're doing something which I guess isn't especially new in terms of the fundamentals of system integrity monitoring, vulnerability assessments, change control, breach detection. What we are doing is providing a huge amount of intelligent automation behind that. So the sort of review and recognition of known acceptable behaviours can be self-learnt by the technology. And the longer you use this, the more intelligent it gets, the better able it is to sort of automatically pre-approve known behaviours. And that means that the genuinely unusual, the real things that you do want to spend time investigating, they're the things that get marked in red and brought to your attention. So you can be operating very tightly controlled vulnerability management, very tightly controlled change control, but without the sort of bureaucracy and hassle of review, because the software will do it automatically. And I know we're a little bit late starting, but if you have got time to stick around, we'll show you a demo of this at the end, just to give you a brief flavour. But I think in closing, really the message is, get the technology right for the general everyday security. Use some of those things that I've touched on in the top 10 tips, but focus on things like vulnerability management, system hardening, lockdown systems. You'll need change control in order to maintain that hardened system. But if you operate that, breach detection and the spotting the signs of malicious behaviour becomes much, much easier. And in that way, you've got a closed loop way of really governing security and proving that you are breach free at all times. So I hope that's helped. We will record the session and we will send out some notes afterwards, including some of this guidance. But I'll invite Mark to come back in, but I've got a couple of questions through the chat facility that have been asked throughout the session. So a couple of which are, will I make the links available? Someone's interested in the security guidance posters. Someone's interested in how you set up AppLocker. So definitely there's some notes coming to you around that, and if anyone wants the demo. But Mark, did you have any other questions from the floor, or shall we move into demo territory to wrap things up?
I'm okay.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Yeah, no, I mean, the only point I would add is that, there's quite a lot of headlines that we've covered, and below each of those headlines there's quite a bit of detail. If you find yourself looking at the presentation and feeling like you just want to have a more generalist discussion about cybersecurity, whether it's specifically related to what we do, we kind of remain in quite a privileged position because we talk to IT professionals and executives every day. We're helping organizations get more secure every day. So we've seen a lot of this over the years, and Mark, myself, even Mark Tyker, I'm sure, would be very happy to talk to anybody, just, even if it's just to have a general conversation about where you're at, kind of where you feel you want to get to, and we'd be happy to cover that off. So yeah, great. Thank you, Mark. That was awesome. Great, thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'll be really quick with this, guys, because if anybody does want to see, a full demo, then by all means let us know. We'd be absolutely delighted to show it to you. Final point on the comment that Mark made. We've tried to position this webinar as a general security. I hesitate to use the word educational webinar, but perhaps just an informative summary. And what I find is that often, customers just want to have a security conversation. They don't necessarily want to have a conversation specifically about NNT or about our products, and we're very happy to have that with you guys. If anybody just feels like they're a little bit kind of overwhelmed or not quite sure where to start, like I say, we do have quite a bit of experience working with lots and lots of different organizations, and I wouldn't say we've seen it all, but I think we've seen an awful lot. So feel free to do that. So I just wanted to kind of quickly show you some of the points that we discussed around this intelligent change control, using the sort of intelligent threat detection, threat information as well, this sort of kind of inbuilt facility to both figure out what's normal both locally and from a sort of an external repository standpoint. And if you look at our product here, this is just a summary dashboard. Basically, you have to be, you don't need to go on a training course to figure out that we're looking at a dashboard here, which shows us for the last 48 hours we've had 6 changes. They're all planned. Now, why that's important is because we've been through the process of hardening our systems. We've been through the process of bring them into what we call a known secure compliant state. So we know that they're set up properly, we know that they're breach-free, we basically know that they're good, and of course they'll remain like that for 100 years or more if nobody touches anything. You know, you put a server in the corner of the room, plug it in and don't do anything, come back 10 years later, it'll have some dust on the top of it, but other than that it'll be pretty much exactly as it was when you left it. The problems are introduced when I think it was one of the you know, the weak point are the people hanging off the keyboards, and whilst we operate in a world that includes human beings, which require service and to make changes, then that's where issues kind of creep in. So this is telling us that everything's kind of fine. So all I was going to do is just going to kind of give you a view of kind of what does happen when changes are initiated. So if I just, I'm just going to grab some sample files here, just going to grab my program files here, and I'm going to grab two DLLs off the bottom here, and I'm just going to make a change to those. So I'll just copy and paste those across into my Windows folder. Okay, so you can see that those two changes have been made, or they will have soon. You've got what looks to be a pretty regular Windows DLL, and you've got what looks to be quite suspicious, mainly because it says suspect on it. So it would be lovely if the bad guys would had the common decency to label these things quite as obviously as that, but obviously they don't. But I'm just really doing this for a point. You know, this is two discrete changes which have occurred. You know, are they normal? Are they okay? Well, at this stage, who knows? But what we do know is that they weren't planned. What we do know is that the only people in the world that know that we've made these changes, as far as we're concerned, are the people in this webinar. Now, what's pretty much immediately happened, however, is we've got this nice big slice of pepperoni pizza in here, which seems to have more pepperoni or more tomato sauce on it than anything else. And we've got an increase in changes. Now, those of you that have been paying attention will know that I made 2 unplanned changes, yet we've only got 1 unplanned change reported. What you might not have seen is that we've also had an increase in the planned changes. So the only unexpected change that's been reported right now is this suspicious looking thing here. If we go back to my dashboard, and I can do that either by just unfiltering out, if I just include planned changes in here as well and just apply that, what you'll see is that in actual fact that change, this JS profile change, has come through, but it's been almost as if by magic. It's been associated with an automated, you can read it for yourself, an automated pre-approved change for this particular file, specifically for this webinar. You'll see that there's been a bunch of changes. We've had a few of these presentations today, so you'll see that there's been a number of those changes. But what's actually happened there is that if we take a look at this file, it provides me with a lot of information around the change. So first of all, up here at the username, very top of the information, it tells me where the change happened. It tells me specifically who made the change. And what's happened is that this is something that we've seen before, and we've acquiesced to it. We've agreed that it's okay. We've decided that it's okay. We even have an external whitelist on hand to help us make that decision. So if we're not entirely sure what it is that we're seeing, we're using Kaspersky Labs for this. It doesn't matter, you could use Total Virus or you could use something else. But we've got this information readily to hand. Now, what I can now do with that is I can do a number of things. When I see that change, obviously we've got a whole bunch of information in there. I can make decisions about it. I can either just kind of tick it off as a planned change. I can create a new intelligent plan change to capture these in the future. And if you look at the information that's contained in there, what that means is that even if there's 1,000 changes that we consider to be okay within our environment, we can set them to be a pre-approved plan change with this inbuilt threat intelligence. So we get double reassurance. We're reassured that it's a change that we're familiar with. We're reassured that it's a change which is essentially okay. It's a legitimate .dll as far as we're concerned, and it can happen again. We don't need to know about it. And the really kind of cool thing about this is that you get just an enormous reduction in the background noise. The longer you use this solution, it kind of self-learns, if you like, and we're very good at doing this. So we can help you walk you through this journey. The more often we see this, we can start to label and automate plan changes. We'll still keep an eye on this fella. So if anything untoward does happen to this, we'll let you know about it. But provided that change continues, provided it's legitimate, we won't necessarily bring it to your attention, which means that we're much better primed to spot this sort of thing, which is our suspicious activity, things that we don't know about, things that we do want to be made aware of. And like Mark said earlier, if you take the Target breach, for example, the reason they got caught out is because they just didn't have this type of technology available to them. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show you guys. Look, there's a ton more. There's all sorts of intelligence built into recording pre-production changes. There's intelligence around handling patches. There's a lot of intelligence around how we combine information. We automatically apply templates for monitoring, the compliance or otherwise of our environment. You can see here that we've left this one very much out of compliant. We do that for a good reason. We do that for demo purposes, just to tell you that if you don't, when HP or Dell, when they ship their devices in, they make these things as secure as they can, but they actually need for you to be able to use them first and foremost, because if they lock them down too much, you're not going to be able to use them. So you're into that obvious trade-off of kind of somebody's ability to use something and secure it. So it's therefore incumbent upon us to use those CIS guidelines that Mark talked about and get our environment into a good steady state. So guys, I'm going to leave it there because this wasn't a product presentation, but I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse into some of the things that we can do. I think, therefore, that is it. Mark, I think that you're unmuted. I will unmute if I can figure out how to do it. Let me just see.
The conference has been unmuted.
If anybody does have any questions, we've got a couple of minutes just left. Feel free to ask away. If not, don't worry. But if there are any questions, we'll give you a second to ask, or if you'd rather just submit those during the exit survey, that's absolutely fine. Okay, no problem. Listen, all that's left for me to do then is to thank everybody once again for your time. We really appreciate it. Hope it's been useful. And I'll sign out, say thanks, Mark, and goodbye. We'll end it there. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for your participation. Appreciate it. Thank you.